welcome to the Wealthy Retailer Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Holman. We're recording for the week of February 11th. Rob, it's a tad cold here in sunny St. Albert today. I was on with a client yesterday in Vermont, and I said, hey, it's minus 32 degrees Celsius here, which is where sort of Celsius and Fahrenheit meet.
Where the two meet, where we can understand, we can speak each other's language.
Yeah. They're like, oh, it's a balmy 6 degrees here today.
I found out a stat yesterday, which means I'm not going to complain much anymore, that when we hit minus 40 this past week, we hadn't even hit the halfway mark of what is the coldest day in Canadian history.
Really?
Minus 81 was recorded. So,
right.
Okay, we'll just be quiet.
That's a good
40.
stat to let stand. That's a record that does not need to be broken.
Do not need to go away, polar vortex. Go away.
Yeah.
But until then, let's talk about the headlines.
Yes.
Some good ones this week. Lots of fun. And the first one just jumped out at me right away, that, this fellow who lived a good life, we'll call it a great life, when everyone refers to you as the Duke of Danforth,
right.
I'd say you've done something right, and talk about building a great reputation. So we'll chat about that. Another one we always enjoy when those headlines hit about, picking on our friend, the big A, Amazon, a little bit. And this story hits on that, truth be told, Amazon prices are really not all that competitive. Right. And it talks about what they think really is to consider there. And when you hear this term, cult retail store, what comes to your mind? And this story about this young lady, getting that status, I'm like, man, it's almost like it doesn't matter what she's selling. If you're referred to as a cult retail store, like, you are doing something right. So looking forward to that. And one of our favorite words of the past year, BOPIS, it continues. I like this because you sort, or I don't know if sort's the right word. No, you kind of package it all in one, when you should be looking at it as multiple personas, right? When someone is coming to pick up, you got to think of them a little bit differently. And this story did a great job of breaking them down, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts there. So first, the Duke of Danforth, a story from CTV in Toronto. Sal Corman, Toronto entrepreneur, and as I said, known as the Duke of Danforth, just passed away. He owned a menswear store. Dan, what were your thoughts here?
Well, Saul Corman is absolutely an iconic menswear retailer. His store is Corey's, open for just about 70 years.
Wow.
Mayor John Tory refers to him as a patriot for Toronto. And you'll remember on our last podcast, we talked about those different types of people or personalities, Rob, that we really want to be engaged with. And patriot, the protector of reputation and results, someone who's in it for the greater good, really speaks to why Mayor Tory referred to Saul this way, and why I believe so strongly in surrounding myself with a comfortable blend of patriots, those people that are in it for the greater good. And Saul being in it for the greater good was probably one of the reasons why, he was a founder, Rob, of the Danforth business development area. He put effort into making sure the business community was well represented, continued to evolve, get stronger, and support each other. He lived community over competition. And that's not to say that he chose community over being this savvy, successful entrepreneur. Yep. He just had this understandable balance between building up my community to help make myself strong. Remember the story, Rob, from a few weeks ago of that what we called, the corn story, the corn farmer, right? The farmer who grew excellent corn. Every year he won an award for having the best grown corn. And he spoke about, that corn, his neighbor's corn, that the air carries the pollen. And if his neighbor's to grow, bad corn, eventually he's going to have bad corn. So he shared his seed with everyone. Well, this is Saul's version of being, that great that great corn farmer, that great patriot, the Duke of Danforth. And for me, this is another example of what the indie retailer needs to practice. We need to be ambassadors for our communities, our cities, our towns. We have to act selflessly with the greater good in mind. Be the example why independent retail is such a critical piece of the economic puzzle. And again, Rob, that doesn't mean that we sacrifice profitability. We recognize that we need to raise the bar in the community, in our retail community, so that there is widespread success. Look at dealerships. Car dealers have done this very, very well. They partner up. They don't intentionally partner up, but they gather in similar places to share in the advertising mechanism that drive-by shootings allow.
You're supposed to come up with a new term for that.
Yeah. When you're out, that the sign is what brings you into the store. That's your marketing medium. It's your location. And why not have 4 car dealerships on the corner instead of 1? And when one advertises, the others benefit from it. Yeah. And this is where retailers kind of miss out a little bit on this. And Saul, great example of community over competition.
Totally. I really like truly, this was years and decades in the making. Like this was not an overnight sensation, and it was this brand. And if you think of yourself today, and jokingly, what are you the Duke or Duchess of? And ask people that when you think of me, what do you think of? And if you get a blank stare at the other side, or it's don't take it the wrong way, but maybe an opportunity to, whether it's your street, your town, a certain part of your community. But what a great opportunity. And clearly when the local politicians are referring to you in that stature, you've done something right in your business career.
For sure. And Rob, I didn't go into a lot of the detail inside this article. The link is going to be in our weekly newsletter, and you really do need to read this article. There's a couple of very inspirational stories today. Saul, while his passing is not that inspirational, but the life he lived as a retail entrepreneur is absolutely inspirational. And is it his son or his grandson? I'm not sure. I remember now. Sean, who's kind of stepped in there, I think it's his son, really has some great things to share about Saul in that article. So you got to check that article out.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the next story comes from the nationalpost.com, and a lot just talking about the pandemic, and a little pointed, some of the missed opportunities that businesses had this year, and in many ways, like, accept responsibility of what happened when we do think of the big A, when we think of Amazon. A lot of people think price first, but in reality, it's the convenience of the shopping and that, and if anything, their pricing is not that competitive out there. So when you hit this story, Dan, what jumps to mind?
Well, first it was like, ouch, oh my gosh. Jesse Klein, the author here, the headline: out of business Canadian retailers have only themselves to blame. Man, that is a prod. That's a poke. Yep. But I'm going to say he's not entirely wrong in his berating of retailers that are not evolving. People continue to support the big A, as you said, out of convenience, not price. We find the same goods at the same price or less and closer to home if we look. But Rob, as retailers, man, we haven't quite figured out how to take advantage of our ability to get in front of her in the dreaming and exploring phase. And then when it comes to that selection phase, we make it difficult. We make it difficult in the way our stores are aligned, our digital stores. We make it difficult in the process of adding to cart. And then we make this fatal mistake of over exaggerating or trying to recover super high shipping charges. And it's the number one complaint that we can get from a consumer. Why didn't you buy? Because they were charging me $60 for shipping or $40 for shipping, or, try to buy something from, south of us. It costs you more for shipping than it does sometimes than the product's worth. And we tend to, as retailers, bitch and complain about how much it costs to ship something without ever thinking about the costs to serve and keep customers in your store. And this customer that is clicking to buy in your virtual or your digital, your e-com store right now, is probably a customer that's never walked in your brick and mortar store today. And now you have an opportunity to make them a customer for life for the minimal, insignificant cost of a Canada Post parcel and a little love with every order. Yeah. Now, and what do I mean by love? Every single order that leaves your establishment has to have a personal touch. It's got to have a note from you, handwritten if possible. And you got to add a little bit of love back into it. You got to throw a little more in. I'll use, the T&B team, the Twig and Berries team, as the example. Candace and Dan really went out of their way to bring things in that they could give to their customers when they placed an order. They use knapsacks. Everything gets packed into a knapsack before shipped. Little Twig and Berries caveman knapsack. Yep. They add stickers. In the summertime, they were throwing beer koozies in. And this really comes from their understanding of their clientele and how they cater to the smile. Not the clientele, but Twig and Berries is catering to that smile. When you open up a box or a Canada Post bag or however it gets to you, that there's more in there than what you actually purchased. And for their clientele, stickers are a wonderful thing. We get more people asking. We have people that buy stickers from Twig and Berries. We see them buying stickers and then cringe because we're going to give it to them anyway. But we do that to demonstrate that they have value. We sell the stickers, or they sell the stickers for $5, I think it is, $2 or $5. I think the knapsacks are maybe $5 or $10, and every order gets that. And that's really what I mean by adding a little bit of love into that order and demonstrating gratitude. And while Jesse spent, 400 words kicking the living shit out of retailers for not being good at e-commerce, it's not that we're not good at e-commerce. It's that we're misplaced. We're not always in front of that customer. We're not taking advantage of local search optimization strategies. We're not deploying or employing these things that get us in front of retailers and, that get us in front of consumers. The other complaint, Rob, that we hear that are barriers that allow us to watch this deterioration of business or migration of business over to the big A, is minimums. In order for me to get free shipping, I got to spend way more than the average price of an item on your store. And retailers use a minimum spend to then give, I'm going to use my air quotes, free, nothing is free, but to give the consumer free shipping. And free shipping, quite likely, is the catalyst that allows her to buy from you instead of that someone else. You've got to lower your minimums and do a better job of increasing the average sale by using recommendations or other people have purchased to ensure you're promoting complementary products to that customer that increase the average spend that lowers your cost of fulfillment. All right. And we get so caught up on this. And Jesse did a pretty good job, like I say, kicking the living daylights out of the retailers.
Well, there's a line in there. It said, very understandable. Some of the small shops were not as prepared as they should. But a point about that, it was amazing how many larger chains were equally not as prepared.
Suck at it. Some still do, Rob. Some still do. And listen, that's okay. This conversation for the mom and pop, what he referred to as mom and pop, I refer to as the indie, the independent retailer. What he referred to them as it being okay for them not to be there was acceptable a year ago. But not today. We're a year down the road here. If you haven't figured this out in the last year, you're not figuring it out. We got to get there, and we've got to continue to improve. Nobody is ever going to come out of the gate and say, yes, did it. Look at it rock. It takes this influence, this Kaizen approach, this philosophy of never-ending improvement to continue inching forward. Don't spend dimes over dollars to get this thing live. Get the thing done now. And then start to perfect it and watch where you're losing people, where you're gaining them. You know, how many people add to cart because you don't have a wish list and then they never buy and you have no idea why.
Fellow said to me many years ago that really sticks with me, and even in this conversation, about how if you're opening an e-commerce store, you do have to think of it like you're opening a second location, brick and mortar, 100 miles down the road, and just to really frame up your thinking that when it comes to your resources, you know, the staff and rent cost. Well, you don't have the rent cost. Well, in this case, you've got delivery cost, right? And if you open your store today, you do 50 sales. Well, you had to pay for rent, for staff, for power, all of that. If you look at that second location, that brick and mortar to your commerce, all of a sudden, that cost of that shipping, you know, maybe it's a lot more palatable in the brain when you compare it that way. And like you say, you just got to get the sale and connect with them any way you can.
Right. And think about the expense that's incurred in building this beautiful brick and mortar store and maintaining it I mean, customer acquisition costs are extraordinary. And that's really what your brick and mortar is. Yep. It's a medium. We've talked about this before. We've talked about it in our retail revelations. Your brick and mortar store is an advertising medium. It's how you gain audience. It's how you bring them in. And the more, you know, experiential your store is, the more audience you hold on to, which we're going to talk about, you know, with Lizzie Pure, you know, in a minute here about, you know, this fabulous entrepreneur that's creating a place that, you know, the hip hops want to be.
Totally. Before we get to that cult of retail story, just a reminder that this podcast is brought to you by Canadian Retail Solutions. Let them help you find your cutting-edge retail solution today. Visit retailbycrs.com. The latest point of sale software, merchandise intelligence, open-to-buy plans, and more. Remember, folks, the team is there to help you. Give them a shout. Okay, Dan, like I said, I love this. Just, you know, right out of the gate, when you're referred to in a headline as you are the owner of the cult retail store, that's pretty awesome. That, you know, back to being the Duke or the Duchess. That's pretty darn close. What'd you think when you saw this story?
Well, cult. Let's define cult in this sense. You know, cult sometimes has this negative connotation instead of what this really is. I mean, cult is a group of people, a social group of people that have common interests in a particular personality or persona or object or goals. And what she's created is a following that will stand by her side, you know, that's not going anywhere. And this story really, Rob, is, I'm going to start by saying this article, number one, outstanding article and a very good read. It was written by Joseph. I might screw up your last name, Joseph, and you're going to have to forgive me. Duchess. He's a style and beauty contributor with Forbes.com. And this is the story of Liz Korn, who owns what is identified as this cult store, Rob, that you're talking about. It's called Pure Atlanta. And what I pulled out of the article, a couple of, you know, verbatim sort of stuff out of the article, besides posing a threat to her competition, Liz Korn, aka Lizzie Pure, is delivering the message that retail is back in style, young at heart, and Pure lives and breathes every iota of her brand, culture, and experience. She is an entrepreneur, a style visionary, a hip hop enthusiast. As you read this article, you're going to really start to understand what that means. Yep. The hip hop enthusiast and a hell of a passionate retailer. And this should speak to every single retailer and business owner for that matter. The latter, the passion should be your leading motivator. If you've lost it or can't find it, it's time to regroup. I've talked, Rob, a few retailers out of their businesses because they lost their passion for it. And some fortunately end in a good way, you know, through a sale, and others don't. They end in escape. And Lizzie Pure, you know, goes on to talk about how she believes and has proven that one of the key elements to grow a successful business is the positive energy that you put out there. More importantly, she doesn't buy into the idea of an alleged retail apocalypse resulting from the pandemic, the sky is not falling. And I would say to every single retailer out there, business owner out there, read this story. Doesn't matter that she's, in Atlanta and somewhere in Texas and Charlotte. I think she might be Dallas and Charlotte.
Yeah.
She's built an iconic cult-driven store. She's got these 40-foot screens in her store that play videos of hip-hop artists that love and cater to this. I pulled out a few that I thought were really great quotes out of this article. She believes that she's proven that the one key element to grow a successful business is the positive energy that gets put out there. Oh my gosh. You've got to think it to live it. You've got to think it to make it happen. Today's consumers want to connect with brands, and a retail store is a place to usher in the next era by evolving to meet their expectation, raising the customer experience and customer engagement game critical. One of the other things I loved about this was her general manager, Timothy Adams was his name. Every day I come to work and I feel at home. I'm surrounded by a team that supports my creativity and cultivates my talent. We drive each other to be our greatest selves. That's a powerful statement.
Yep.
to hear a GM say. Ultimately, as I'm reading through this article, she made this decision to exit the relative safety of corporate retail to build Pure, and she's never looked back. How many of our retailers right now have done the exact same thing? They left the comfort of corporate retail. She grew up in the Gap and left the Gap to start this. Maureen from Skirt, left corporate retail to do her own thing. Stacy left her hometown and corporate retail Stacy from Olive and Betty's to go and pursue her dream. This is not an uncommon place. And I promise you, 2021 will see more
of that.
Entrepreneurs leave the corporate world to do their own thing. And it is so, so inspiring to hear, right? They pride themselves on being a resource, for what she calls the hip hop artists throughout their career. And it goes beyond that. Her clients become family and friends. And this is the story of successful retail. Yeah. And you gotta read this. Retailers, you gotta read this. One of her, what I look to as one of the greatest attributes, and yes, while she carries some pretty great luxury brands, they've also created their own brand and now have, Cash, K-A-S-H, as their own brand that's building its own following that caters to men, women, children, covers off apparel and accessories and some home decor things that feed her audience. And that is critically important. The last thing I'm going to say, what I really, felt inspired by this thing, I don't know how much, 6 pages, I think, or 16, if you print the thing to read it, 16 pages, is just every step of it is inspirational and refed passion, even into me as a retail coach, that I've got to go share this great story with my retail audience. You got to read that. So I'm going to say it again. Man, get on our newsletter. If you're not on our newsletter, you're not going to see this headline. We're scraping North America for what we believe are the best headlines that we can take and turn into something relatable for you. And this is the best example, Rob, that we've come up with. Good job.
Yeah, it was a great one. I look at it, Dan, as it's almost like she's just unapologetically passionate. Yep. And has carved out this just amazing vertical, which has turned into just as passionate customers on the other side. And
the retailers, Rob, that live in this luxury world, that live in this exclusive brand world, are not always inclusive. And one of the things that she professes is inclusivity. Every race, every gender, every sexual orientation. The team is made up of this widespread, inclusive group that truly caters to her audience, her consumer, her clientele.
Good stuff. as Dan said, that'll be in the newsletter, so be sure to check that out this week. Dan, our next story comes from sailthrough.com. Pretty neat headline. I liked it. We joked about the BOPIS word through the year, but so much of it going on now, BOPIS curbside pickup. But this story breaks down the 4 personas you really need to know in your retail store as it relates to this.
Yeah,
What's
for sure.
for you here?
Yeah, and so right off the top, I'm just going to say, let's identify these 4 personas that the author, his name's Mike O'Brien. He has identified these 4 personas in this, what was a BOPIS world that's now changing. It's more of a click and pick. So we have the new shopper who's new to your brand. Your brand is your store. So a brand new shopper is number 1. Number 2 is your loyal customer who shop with you in store and online. They are an omni-channel customer. The third one is the pickup pro, somebody who's clicked and collected and will do so with your brand if the experience is seamless, not painless, seamless. And the last one is the BOPIS beginner, the buy online, pick up in store beginner, who became a click and collect shopper more recently, whether out of convenience or caution, they're brand new to it. And so click and collect has been, I'm using their phrasing, click and collect.
Yep.
I don't know that we've really called it that, but it is truly click and collect. I love how simplistic this is. Click and collect has steadily grown in popularity over the years. We've had this going on. BOPIS didn't just come out in 2020 pandemic year. It's been going on for several years, and it's naturally accelerated. And these guys surveying 5,000 customers from various demographics last November. Sailthrough, who is where this article comes from, and Live Clicker found that, get this number, 31% of the audience of those surveyed used BOPIS or curbside pickup this year. And they're telling us that these 4 personas represent unique customers and should be engaged differently. Moreover, as they go into this article, they really talk about, how we have in the past measured people on that RFM model, which is recency, frequency, and the monetary value of purchase.
Yeah.
Well, we live in a different world than we did in the past, and understanding these personas has become an important measure of this. So I'm going to throw this at you. We're going to go off script and ask our marketing and content guru, Rob.
Yep.
How do we start to identify and create messaging for our differing audiences, whether it's as categorized as these guys have done, these 4 personas, or any other matter in which we might need to segregate our audience to connect with them? Back to you.
Yeah, jumping in, like you say, if you right out of the gate, if you say, okay, we have 4 different type of people that are going to come, to collect their items here. So we have to engage with them. We have to create content for them. You talked about Twig and Berries, popping in a sticker, the little thank you. Maybe there's that thank you so much for your first time shopping with us note for that one category that this is their first time coming. For the other, the real regular business, maybe it's something that here's an incentive for you. We appreciate your business. Here's an incentive to come back next week. And I don't know exactly what's going to work, but I would say if you think with that mindset that we need to create different approaches to it, and then, look, listen, and learn, like see what's happening with them, follow up with them. And was that beginner, did what you do really resonate with them in their experience? Yes, no. And don't worry about no. Like don't take great offense from it. You're learning. Like you're trying to figure out what that best approach is with that different customer. And I really think that when you go with that attack, that not treating them all equally, just I've done sales a long time. I've always used the line, I can swear with truckers and pray with nuns, right?
Right.
You adapt to the scenario, and I think this is that challenge to stores: adapt to the different types of customers are coming for that pickup at your store.
Right, for sure. And so you talk about that, surveying the audience and asking that question. The most critical question that you can ask a customer, the most identifying question you can ever ask a customer, is there anything I could have done to enhance the experience, to make the experience better? And we are often afraid of the answer so we don't ask the question. Instead of, we learned this a long time ago, never ask a question you don't already know the answer to, right? Of your audience, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer. If you don't believe that there's more you can do, don't ask. If you don't believe there's more you can do, ask the question and truly find out. I mean, the whole idea of asking this question of your audience is really to uncover what you don't know. And no one can be held accountable for what they don't know. There's a difference between, I didn't know, what the speed limit was, and I didn't know that I was doing this wrong. One comes from a place of ignorance, and one comes from a place of genuinely not knowing the right answer. So you've got to get out there and you've got to ask those questions. Survey your audience. I don't know why we're always so afraid to ask why, or ask how. What is it I could do? Back in my furniture days in Edmonton, we had that little 5-question survey that every delivery driver left on the return. Every card went in for a draw. We encouraged people to fill it out. And the bottom of that survey card, is there anything I could have done to enhance the experience? Anything. Wide open. I don't care if it's, charge less, charge more. Doesn't matter what it is. Yep. I want all ideas. I want to filter them all in and then silo them and decide which ones can be acted on and which ones can't. But I'll never know the answer if I don't ask the question. Yep. And in today's world, pretty easy to ask a question of your customer.
Yeah. Is that something, Dan, just throwing a question out there, could retailers include a question in the checkout process was this your first time shopping with us? Or is that something that, no, that's your data, you got to know that, you got to figure it out?
Well, I think, is this your first time shopping with us, that's on you. Yeah. But the minute they check out, why wouldn't we send them to a form that has those questions, that has good questions? Yep. They've clicked done. They've clicked, place order. And instead of getting just the standard, thank you for your order, we'll contact you when it's available for pickup or when it's going to ship. Yep. Maybe there's a 3-question checkbox. It's not hard to do. No, and maybe they fill it out. Maybe they don't. Yep. But if you don't ask, you'll never know.
You can almost automate that process too, right?
It's 100% automated.
Side. So
yeah, it's automated. It is automatable.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like I said, it really just forced a different level of thought, looking at your customers differently. And you know what? We get caught in this so often that they're just all the same. Just make one policy, one approach, and just do it that way. And I think it's a great challenge to put out to your team too, to your staff. Like
it is.
Hey, think of it. What were they to us? And let's talk about it for a moment.
Right. And even the way that these guys describe those 4 personas, we're not thinking about that. And this is why I loved this, the way that this article came to us. I love this because it makes us think about something that we haven't thought about that is truly relevant in our business right now. We have this going on, and it's going to continue.
Okay, sir. Well, something we didn't think about, and someone had to send it to us in the form of our new retailer question for Dan. So tell us about this week's question, Dan.
Yeah. So Terry says, hey, Dan, I'm headed into heavy buying week. I need some guidance on dealing with reps that are pushing me to place my fall winter orders earlier and earlier. Do you have any tips to help me from buying too much? And
great question.
I got a big smile on my face because, I probably have something to say here. And oftentimes I'm criticized for not delivering just a pure answer. I ask a bunch of questions to really understand. And so, my instant response to that question is, well, do you have a plan at the class or category level that we can then allocate by vendor as they rank in your store today? Do you already have that?
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Have you left any budget for new or test merchandise?
Right.
Do you total your spend by class or category at the end of each season appointment or day? And I often hear this back, oh, that's too much work. I'm so tired at the end of the day. Well, let me tell you what, it's not nearly as much work as clearing out your overbuys, on markdown and not making a cent in the process. There's a couple of challenges here that we need to identify. The vendor, the rep, is just doing their job the same way that you do your job in your store. You never stop presenting complimentary pieces. You never stop presenting solutions to your customer until they say no. You never stop.
Yep.
It's never, here's the sweater you tried on. It's here's the 4 other things that you need with that sweater. And you never stop building their wardrobe, never mind the outfit, until they tell you to stop. And the reps are well trained at selling, and they're not going to stop selling you until you tell them to stop. And they're not bad people. They're great people. They have great insight into where trend is, and you need to lean on them as partners and not as opposition. And so pull them closer, don't push them away. When you hear things that are pressure driven, you got to place it by now, you got to do this now, you're not going to get in the cutting, those are tactics. Those are all tactics to get you to buy as much as you can.
Yep.
Or you're willing to with them at that moment. They use things like discounts to place early season orders. And that's just bribery to get you to overspend. Remember, it's their job to fill your store with their stuff without care or concern for the rep, vendor, or product you're going to see 10 minutes from now. Right?
Nice.
It's their job. And discounts today force you to overbuy, that you then discount, mark down at end of season when overbought. Only the most astute retailer should ever take advantage of a preseason discount. Every retailer should be able to take advantage of an early payment discount, which is far more attractive to me than an order placing discount. Give me a discount to quick pay this invoice. To pay it right now, give me a discount, 3%, 5%, 7% that falls right to the bottom line, instead of a discount to place an order that sees you overbuy, that you then mark down below sometimes cost, where you're in fact you're recovering less than the dollar you invested. So, I start to ask those questions. Do you at the end of your appointment tell your rep to hold the order for confirmation? Put your hand up if you've ever said, hold the order for confirmation. Rob, listen, I'm no stranger to overbuying. I'm no stranger to falling to the prowess of a great, sales rep. That's their job. They know their stuff. They know their product. Having spent, a good bit of time buying for, our stores, a $55 million furniture company, I would often buy the same thing from all different vendors. And that really led me to listen to my inventory mentor, my coach, to say, stop placing orders at market. Every single order should be held for confirmation. There are always exceptions to that rule, but the rule of thumb should be hold for confirmation. Here it is, placed, hold for confirmation. Take a copy of that order with you. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of your, buying period, start to total all those orders by class. Let's look at exactly what you spent, right? And, how do you review that process? What's your review process look like? Did you just go and buy the same black pant from 4 different vendors? Wow, that's an overspend. You probably overbought in one class and underbought in another. And so really, I'll wrap this up, as I did for Terry. If you want to know what to buy, what to land, and how much you need, you need to be on a true merchandise or open to buy plan. And before I get this pushback that I always get, it's too expensive, I'd ask, what other service providers or vendors for that matter are in your store and give you a 3 to 5 time return and grow profitable sales with a focus on your cash flow. There isn't anyone else in your business that does that. So how can you not afford to be on a good plan? That doesn't mean, that my plan is the best plan. My plan's the only plan. I certainly believe ours is the best, but everybody has to find the plan that fits for them. And even Rob, simplistic plan can help you inch that needle forward for yourself, inch to that next level. And I'm going to say, if you want to know if our plan works, I think this might even be the first time we've ever said this, but if you want to know if our plan would work for you, just take advantage of an inventory analysis offer. It's complimentary. There's no cost, no obligation. We'll dig in and figure out, by looking at your current, structure today, your current data, where you're missing sales, which categories should be expanded, what should be contracted. Let's look at where you're losing cash or money, and more importantly, where you can rebuild or recoup some of that cash that you've lost. Yeah. And while we've heard and said this for a long time, inventory is the lifeblood of a retail store. You need to know what you have and what's coming and how best to respond to the current and future markets to achieve success. The true lifeblood in retail, in any retail business, is the ability to turn inventory back into cash and how to create sustainable replenishment. Rob, you need a roadmap when you're going somewhere you've never been, right? And if you've never been somewhere, you use a roadmap, you use Google Maps, you use some mechanism to get the direction to achieve the result. And sufficient cash flow is a place lots of us haven't been, and we need a roadmap. I'm going to say it again. You want to take advantage of a no cost, no obligation inventory analysis? Send an email to dan@thewealthyretailer.com and we'll do it for you and show you with no pressure. You got to do this. Well, definitely show you what it costs to be on a plan, but I'm going to show you where the opportunities are in your business to be more cash profitable.
That's awesome. You've talked a couple times on the couple takeaways I have that, gaining that understanding of the classifications, what works for you and your business. But you've also talked lots about building better relationships with your vendors, and
for sure.
But being able to guide that relationship with your data, your understanding of the business, I would think the weight that would take off of your shoulders of that uncertainty, what drove this question. Yep. It's pressure coupled with uncertainty. That's a wicked combination together. But you just described a couple great ways that could really put the retailer in a real power position.
Yeah, and we have as many vendors and sales reps that refer our merchandise planning services. The Management One, give Management One a plug. I do it every week. The Management One Retail Orbit Plan. We have more vendors and sales reps refer their clients to us than our own clients refer to us. They love it when you walk in there with a plan and that you have clear and concise measurement that allows you guys to be on that same playing field, to truly understand, what's driving business and what's not, and how they can expand their footprint in your store.
Have full confidence. They're still going to push for more opportunity, but at least they're doing it to your plan.
Right. It's their job.
Yeah, totally. So
for sure.
Right on. Okay, yeah, a lot of great stuff this week, Dan. And folks, if you haven't yet, head to retailbycrs.com. You've got to sign up for the newsletter. And I'm sure a fellow independent retailer too. You need to shoot them a note and say, you know what, you need to sign up to this. This is good info you're going to get each week. In addition to the links to the stories we talked about today, there's also a few additional stories. There's one about a new approach from a retail incubator. They're targeting some of the underserved communities. That was pretty cool to see. We know the challenge of COVID and openings and rules continues, and a story about giving those politicians a good little push. Another story about, with all this growth in e-commerce, a lot of online e-transfer transactions, unfortunately has led to a surge in fraud. So just a good little refresher and reminder of what you need to look for there. And a story talking about that the retail apocalypse did not happen last year, despite the headlines, despite the coverage. So you can weigh in with your thoughts with that story. So great stuff, Dan. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And if you're a retailer listening and you have a question, and you want an objective answer, send an email to dan@thewealthyretailer.com. You'll get a personal response from me, with my opinion. Built from experience, not just out of the air. Other retailers want that. Let's build a stronger community together. Hit us up at dan@thewealthyretailer.com. Head over to retailbycrs.com. Join that newsletter. Get it every Friday morning in your inbox. It'll have a copy to, of course, this podcast, along with all of the headlines that we actually talk about and the ones that Rob mentioned that we didn't talk about. Thanks so much for joining us again this week. We'll talk to you next week.